Okay, in this video, I'm gonna give you my first impressions on this city, Buenos Aires, Argentina. This is a place that I wanted to visit before. When I was in Peru, I think was it last year? Pretty sure it was last year, 2021. My plan was to go down to Chile and then go down to Argentina. But due to the restrictions during that time, they weren't letting anyone in except for their own citizens, so I wasn't able to visit. However, the opportunity presented itself, and here we are. I've been here for around 1 week, and I think that's usually a good time to do this type of video because I was able to see and experience certain situations, which is going to bring me to my disclaimer. Remember, this is a first impressions video, so certain observations that I have may be incorrect, may be false. I understand that. These are subject to change in the future. Now, that being said, let's get into the first impression. Before we get into the city specifically, let's talk about the country for a quick second. When I was doing research and looking online, I didn't know that Argentina was the 8th largest country in the world. Not by population, but landmass, surface area. At first glance, it didn't come across as, being in the top 10 as far as large countries. But I think that's because it's not really wide. It's more elongated. It's longer in length. So that kind of tricked me a little bit. And another thing to point out when it comes to that is I was looking up other cities to visit in this area, and I noticed that the travel time was a little longer than I thought. Because on the map, it looks pretty close until you actually put in the directions. And then you realize again, okay, this country is larger than I expected. The second point on the list, and we're gonna head back, we're gonna talk about Buenos Aires specifically now. While watching the footage, you may notice that some people are wearing jackets and sweaters. And that's because right now it's a little chilly. We're in the fall season. Some people, when they think of the countries in this region, they associate them with just heat and humidity all year round. But you have to realize that Argentina is farther down on the southern hemisphere. And so the farther away you get from the equator, the chillier it gets. And I got hit with that when I first touched down because I was coming from Brazil, where when I was in Rio, it was hot. Even when I was in Sao Paulo, it was a little humid out there. And then I touched down in Buenos Aires at night and bam, wind chill. Then you got the water nearby as well. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Not every single place you go to in Latin America is just gonna be hot and humid every day. This third point is safety. And I heard about this before ever visiting. I read some blogs and went on some websites, and that was a main topic that was brought up a lot about the safety, pickpocketing, robberies. And then when I touched down here, I heard all that stuff over again. The Uber driver who picked me up was telling me about a time when he was robbed. And so he was giving me safety precautions, the standard stuff. Hey, make sure you're careful with your phone out on the street and carrying a lot of cash, etc., etc. There was another situation where I didn't have internet. And so I was asking for directions. I went to a bakery. I was standing outside and I asked one of the workers for directions, and she wanted me to pull out my phone to show me on Google Maps or something like that. But then she had me come inside her bakery first, telling me she didn't want me to get my phone stolen or robbed. So definitely, I'm pretty sure, stuff like petty crime and things of that nature is a common thing. And just like most mega cities, it's no different. You have a ton of people, a ton of movement, so you have to remain vigilant and obviously always take certain safety precautions. But that's just something that kind of threw me off a little bit, how much people were so aware, or it seemed like they were kind of always on edge to a certain extent. So if I had to guess, pickpocketing and snatch and runs may be a common thing from the vibe I'm getting in this city. Next up on the list, if I had to guess, I would say that Buenos Aires is somewhat of I don't know the term you would use, like a late city. What I mean by this is when I first arrived, I needed certain services done. So the places I went to, they do this thing where, I don't know if it's like a siesta, an Italian thing, where they take a break at 3 p.m. and then the business doesn't open back up again until 5. So they take a 2-hour siesta or 2-hour break in the middle of the day. I don't know if that's common with many establishments here, but some of the ones that I looked up when I first arrived, most of them did that. So because of that, and also due to another situation where I went to an establishment, it was 2:30, 2:45-ish, and the people, they were out at lunch. And I was thinking to myself, man, 3 o'clock, that's a pretty late lunch. So I would have to assume that if this place takes siestas and they take late lunches, they probably have late dinners. which means the party probably doesn't start until much later as well. And I can see that because I was looking at a flyer one time for it was like a nightclub or something. And usually back home where I'm from, the US in Seattle, they have promotions where women get in free until like 11 p.m. But that's because the club closes at 2. Here, they had that same promotion, but it was women getting free until 2 a.m. And I was thinking to myself, if women get in free until 2, that means the club probably doesn't close until like 5 or 6. So if you're a night owl, I'm sure you love that. And last but not least, I think this last point is the main thing that will stand out to you when you're walking through the city, and that is the European influence that you see, all over the architecture and in the food. Also, the speech of the people here. It sounds like they're speaking Spanish with like an Italian accent or something. Also, one of the Uber drivers was telling me that, Buenos Aires has been gifted many things from Europe. One of those is they have like a Big Ben replica clock that I noticed that night. I was like, oh man, that looks like the clock in London. And the Uber driver and the driver telling me, yeah, man, it's a replica. And also there are some other things as well. But basically the point I'm trying to get at is that when you'll notice the European feel while being in the city. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and end it right here. These are my first impressions on being here in Buenos Aires, Argentina. As I said earlier, these are just some initial thoughts about the place from being here around 1 week. I definitely plan to explore more. I'm just hoping that the weather stays the way it's been for, the past week, because we are in fall right now. So I have to get a lot in before the grayness and the cold comes. And also remember that these thoughts and ideas are subject to change in the future for some of you guys who are gonna type some stuff in the comment section. Just don't go too hard. But that being said, I'm gonna end it right here. I appreciate you guys watching. I hope you have found some value in it, and I'll catch you guys at the next one. Deuces.